Hello guys, I am Vitold and I'm fighting with my inner self every time I think and speak about Moto Guzzi brand. I've ridden both of the bikes in question, the V85 TT from the mid-size adventure category and then a Stelvio 1000 from the large adventure motorcycle segment that is launched for 2024 and on. And I had some specific observations about both of them that clearly insult their owners. So in other words, I sometimes openly dislike them, and then some of you guys then openly dislike me for that. Now the idea behind my channel is and will be to provide honest opinions and reviews to also stay resistant to external pressure. I do rent all these motorcycles just like anyone could. It is a cost to me, but an investment for us all. I said that beautifully. I've ridden all large and middleweight adventure motorcycles, so I've got a pretty good outlook at what is possible, and this is how I'm going to assess these two now in this video, comparing them to each other. These are aspiring adventure motorcycles, and there are riders that are wondering which one would suit them better. I've got an answer for you. None. Go somewhere else. Just kidding, obviously. But there is a very specific type of rider that each of those might suit. And so let's dig into the topic so that you know what to expect and then pay the most attention to when making your decision. I will break it down into separate categories for easy understanding. The first one is engine and performance. In V85 TT, there is a two-cylinder engine in a V shape with 853 cubic centimeters of displacement, 80 horsepower and 80 newton-meters of torque. Stelvio also has a two-cylinder V-shaped engine, but larger, as with 1042 cubic centimeters of displacement, 35 horsepower more at 115 horsepower, 25 newton meters more at 105 newton meters, and well, both of them aren't where I would like them to be. V85 TT really has not much juice. There's a certain strange delay in delivering power when rolling the throttle open, which is a problem at lower speeds when you maneuver. You can see that in my full review of this motorcycle. You can clearly see where the issue is. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Now, foot pegs in this bike also vibrate insanely at higher RPM, gears sometimes don't want to engage, and it's super frustrating to live with a transmission like that in the end. On top of that, there is a super loud gear click sometimes, and the heat comes hitting your legs from behind those cylinders sticking out to the sides. No quick shifter as well. In Stelvio there can be a quick shifter, but my Stelvio that I was given didn't have it, so I don't know how good it is. Performance-wise, it is not super exciting and rather sluggish, especially below 6000 RPM with weak flexibility. Still, it is so much better than the V85 TT, as you don't need to plan overtaking a while before in order to first start gaining speed for the maneuver to go smoothly. But there is an even more dramatic and huge clank when engaging at the first gear. A bit of heat coming from the engine, but nothing terrible. Both are way below the expectations, low within their segments, and simply aren't exciting for me regardless of riding mode that they are in. Still, riding V85 TT is painful considering it, while Stelvio is just not giving as much as I thought it should. But it's not a slow bike, so definitely it wins here. The second aspect is handling. Here V85 TT feels stable in the high-speed corners, it is under control and everything's okay, while at low speeds you will see that it's balanced in an awesome way. This is its true strength. Then when opening and closing the throttle at speeds, it gets visibly wobbly, and I don't like that, but it's still manageable. Stelvio handles pretty well at lower speeds, but it's not that super encouraging when in a lean at higher speeds. It's all still under control until you use the front brake in the lean at an angle, as the whole bike completely loses its mind trying to stand up, or rather straighten up. This is a severe issue in my eyes, one of the worst behaviors in the segment actually. Thankfully, accelerating in a lean is okay on this bike. V85 TT wins here big time, as it's composed and it does great. Gotta give credit where you gotta give credit. Anyway, whatever the saying is. Now let's talk about suspension. Here V85 TT is rather on the soft and comfy side. It's not the best, it is a bit floaty in the rear, which gives an impression of being sort of loose and rubbery, but it sort of matches with the style of this motorcycle. Its front end doesn't dive so much, and that's a plus. In Stelvio, I wish that there was more suspension travel than the current 17 centimeters. The bike gets along with single potholes, but then gets absolutely destroyed and confused on a generally an overall rough road, and I've never seen something like that before at all, I think. Suspension basically says bye-bye and it goes home, leaving you with a sort of a direct connection to the wheels. That's how it feels. Very, very bad, and V85 TT is so much better in terms of suspension setup. Category number 4 is seat and position comfort, and here we've got the same seat height of 83 centimeters in both bikes with no adjustment. On a V85 TT the knee angle is fine, but I would prefer a taller seat. And guess what? I would like to have a taller seat on the Stelvio too. But here I felt that the knee angle should be more relaxed. It's a little better. On both, I would sit with a possibility to slightly lean back as the handlebars are rather close to the rider. Now, it sort of makes me think that clearly these bikes are for smaller riders from a few generations back when the common folk were shorter and the doors for them were shorter too. Both seats on these bikes are comfortable with no need of replacing them or modifying, which is a success. To me, V85 TT might be winning this one slightly. Now what about wind protection? V85 TT's short windshield on this particular bike in this trim does nothing, and the adjustment changes its angle, but it requires tools. Conclusion: useless. Stelvio, on the other hand, has a good windshield, generating no buffeting and having electric adjustment, which is totally great. I'm loving it, and Stelvio is a clear winner here. Number 6 is brakes. In V85 TT they work, but the way that the front lever works is so soft and relaxed that if you would brake hard and squeeze it hard, the range of motion of the lever would end unless you move the lever further away from the grip, which may not necessarily suit your fingers. In Stelvio, the front brake does nothing until it suddenly hits you like crazy. So in other words, it's hard to dose, but it's there with a lot of force available. Rear brake does nothing, so it's not so good. So which behavior should we prefer? Bad dosing and kicking you out of balance that hurts you every single time of a brake in the Stelvio, or a brake that may not be strong enough when you need it in the V85? I cannot make a decision here, and both are losers, with perhaps Stelvio coming slightly on top, as after time you may get used to the way it works, and you may learn how to deal with it, while with V85 TT's brakes you can't do anything basically. Then in the drivetrain category, we've got an interesting contest of two motorcycles from two different but connected still segments that do have drive shafts. That's great. And there's a properly built and tuned one in Stelvio and a pretty annoying one in comparison in V85 TT, because it lifts the whole bike when you're adding throttle, and then it lets the bike drop once you release that throttle. There's a clear influence of it on a motorcycle, which shouldn't be the case nowadays. Stelvio does it much better, and its drivetrain is therefore the winner, right here in my eyes. Fuel tanks are of decent capacity, and in V85 TT there are 23 liters, while Stelvio may carry 21 liters. What matters is range, but this depends on where and how you ride, so let's choose the V85 TT. Weight-wise, the V85, let me just drop the T's from time to time. The V85 is between 230 and 235 kilograms. It is a relatively low motorcycle, and it causes no issues in terms of moving it around. It feels very nimble at low speeds, and this further enhances the feeling of it being light. Stelvio is 246 kilograms, and it doesn't feel heavy, but the winner is V85. I'm going to skip the TT part. 10th point is technology, and in V85 there is not much on its display, but there's LED front light, the riding modes, ABS, cruise control, traction control, no quick shifter, which is strange and makes it appear even more outdated than it may really be. Stelvio is a very new bike with a cool electric windscreen, a front radar with adaptive cruise control, a rear radar with a blind spot monitoring system possibly available there, There's a quick shifter, cornering front light, and there can be tire pressure monitoring system that I'm not sure can be there in V85 TT from the factory at least. So in common, they've got riding modes, LED front lights, ABS and traction control. That's not sophisticated in the way it works, by the way. Stelvio clearly wins here with a lot of stuff available for it. Both motorcycles sound pretty nice with their V2 engines, but I like the V85 more thanks to its very specific, unusual and irregular rumble like an old V8 classic car. I elaborate on that in my full review of this bike. That's linked in the description. Check it out. Both motorcycles, I think, are obviously too quiet, so aftermarket exhaust may give them some emotions back. That I feel that this could be the best thing that can be done to both of these bikes, to sort of restore and give them something that's really cool about them that I feel is or maybe missing now. Unless you're a Moto Guzzi fan, then obviously nothing is missing. In terms of design, I'm not a huge fan of either myself. This is a subjective one very much, but Stelvio looks more conservative and up to date with its modern design. Different style. Well, it's nothing fancy, but good proportions and a light sort of look. I prefer the way it looks, and I think it's a pretty bike. I don't really like the V85 TT style, it's just not me, but I know that there are hardcore fans, so it's not up for a discussion. Actually, both bikes have super cool tail lights, and in V85 it's nicely done with where the light appears in the front lamps as well. When in low beam mode, you can see the difference when you switch from high to low and low to high. Discussing prices is tricky, but the difference between the base versions of these two is around 38%, with Stelvio being this much more expensive. And that's still without options, and I feel it's too much for what it offers while being a relatively similar bike in terms of style to all others in the segment, actually being below sort of the segment of big adventure motorcycles that are between 12 and 1300 cc's now. This one is barely above 1000. V85 TT has its own unique style, and this may matter. Fully seriously, I can understand that. Still, considering the difference in performance, Stelvio might have been worth it, if not the basic flaws, mainly in terms of suspension. I would lean towards saying that V85 bought by the right customer may offer better value for money than Stelvio. People willing to have Stelvio have much better options on the table. V85 comes here on top, to me. The last category to discuss is X Factor, which to me isn't particularly high in either of these bikes, but again, it is adequate performance of the Stelvio against the style of V85. In terms of riding itself, Stelvio is a more exciting bike, no questions asked. Not necessarily better, but more exciting, just also because of power. Then owning them, V85 may make its owners smile more often. So my choice here would be Stelvio, but I'm not attached to this statement. In conclusion, V85 is a weird bike with its own, very own style. It's different. Well, if you don't want to call it weird, call it different. Both motorcycles are not very sophisticated overall in terms of how they ride, and I'm very certain that there are much better motorcycles in both segments. If I had to choose only between these two, I would go with Stelvio purely because of its electronic gimmicks, modern style that suits me better, and its performance. V85 TT handles better, it has better suspension, but it feels outdated and even less sophisticated than Stelvio. To know more in detail, well, do watch my full reviews of each bikes that are linked in the description. See you there!